Acting. Ooh. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Langer at the Mic Live. We're doing our first roundtable live show here on Langer at the Mic. Usually we pre-record these, but we got two fun guests here. We got Mr. Zack Pencer from this stadium. We got Mr. Matt Cowan. How's it going today, guys?
Yo, it's going great. Just an honor to be on the show. Finally made it work.
Yeah, man, I've been trying to get you on for almost a year now. But I'm just happy that you're able to finally join us here, Zach. And of course, Matt Cowan, a regular on our Langer at the Mic roundtable shows. How's it going, man?
And it's going great. It's a beautiful day outside and nothing to complain about.
Yeah, honestly, the weather here in Toronto is fantastic as well. Just sunny. Make sure you get outside, get some vitamin D, and obviously stay safe from COVID. And I just want to make a quick statement about the attacks on because we're all Jewish here, right? So I just want to make a quick statement on giving my best wishes, and my prayers are to those fellow Jewish people out there that are potentially at risk from being attacked for no other reason than because we are Jewish. So best wishes and prayers go out to you. And that's all the politics we're going to really mention. But we got a playoff series for the first time since 1979. For the first time in our life, we have the Montreal Canadiens taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs coming up this week. But before I get into that, I want to recap, just summarize in kind of one statement. What were your thoughts on this 2021 Montreal Canadiens season? Let's start with Zach.
I think they finished right around where I would have expected them to finish. I think everyone got so overhyped at the beginning. Like, let's give Marc Bergevin GM of the year already, executive of the year for all those moves. I said, hold your horses. We got to see how these guys play out, how things go. But I mean, in the NHL, the goal is to make the playoffs, basically, because once you're in, anything could happen. So very happy with how things turned out, that they managed to squeeze in, because for a period of time, it was looking like they might have blown it.
Yeah, exactly. It was a bit of an underwhelming year for me personally, but I'm very happy they made it in too. And that is the goal in the NHL these days.
I would say the Canadiens had the second most difficult schedule in the NHL, considering what happened, what they dealt with COVID, considering how late in the year it happened. Probably the only other team that had a worse schedule than the Habs this year was the Vancouver Canucks, right?
In the North Division, you're saying? In the Canadian
possibly
division.
Overall. I mean, look at the other teams that dealt with COVID. It happened earlier in the season when they had time to deal or to reschedule those games that they lost. So if the Habs, who had the week off early in the season, had that week off been later in the season, that could have been a time to reschedule some games that wouldn't have been as bad.
Yeah.
So considering the fact that the Habs have had probably the second most brutal schedule in the NHL and still managed to squeak into the playoffs, to me is quite remarkable. But like you guys said, there were a lot of points of frustration this year with the inconsistencies, with the play by the defense, with the fact that certain guys like Jesperi Kotkaniemi was on track to taking that next step in his development, but then didn't, because they brought in a guy to kind of stopgap that center situation in Eric Staal. But to me, he hasn't really panned out, at least in the regular season. So I would just say it's just been and obviously they fired the coach, they fired Claude Julien, and then Dominic Ducharme wasn't much better. And then they also fired Stéphane Waite, but Carey Price didn't really have a chance. I mean, he was really good in the month of March, but he didn't really have a chance outside of that to show how much of a difference Brian Burke was compared to Stéphane Waite. So I don't know, it was just a very weird off season, a very weird regular season. But like you guys said, at the end of the day, just make the playoffs, make it to the dance, and literally anything could happen. You had the Dallas Stars go all the way last year. The freaking Dallas Stars made it to the Stanley Cup final last year. So anything could happen. They're in the dance. And but before even the Leaf series, Carey Price and Brendan Gallagher, for the first time, Carey Price, the first time probably since before 2010, I'd say 2007, and Brendan Gallagher since 2012, 2013, they're going to suit up for the Laval Rockets. So I want to ask you guys, are you guys comfortable with them playing tonight, or are you guys afraid of what they have to lose? What are you guys feeling with Price and Gallagher playing in the Laval Rockets season finale tonight?
I'm excited to see them play. I want to see them play. It's an opportunity for them to shine, because they are they are expected to produce way more than a typical AHL player. So, I'm looking forward to seeing them back in action, seeing what they can do. And there's only excitement for me in this situation. Coming off conditioning, you don't know how their conditioning is going to be off of injuries, and we get a little chance to see them before the playoffs. It could be cool.
Well, I don't know. For me, I think it's a little ridiculous. Especially, we're gonna get to Carey Price after. I'm sure Matt Cowan's on your side there, Lang, as most Montrealers are. But Brendan Gallagher, this guy is a great player for this team. There's absolutely no point in risking him getting injured in a game. And people will say injuries are so uncommon, all that. They're really not. I mean, we just saw it in basketball last night with LeBron James being on the court in a meaningless game. He got injured. I mean, what's the point of risking it? I'm sure Brendan Gallagher will get back to game speed pretty quick. I don't think this one game will help things.
So I have a bit of a differing opinion on Carey Price and Brendan Gallagher in terms of playing tonight. For Brendan Gallagher, I'm with you there, Pencer. I'm totally with you because Brendan Gallagher, there's enough bodies at the forward position where the Habs can ease Gallagher back into action in the playoffs. Like if he doesn't have, he's Gallagher, so the way he plays, he's going to go, balls to the wall regardless, right? So to me, it's with Gallagher, it's more risk than reward, especially with the two goons that the Leafs or the Marlies are going to have in the lineup, and Scott Sabrin and Mac Hollowell. I'm not too happy about that. So to me, with Gallagher, you're right. It is a little bit more risk than reward, and I don't know if Joel Bouchard is going to play Gallagher 10 minutes or 18 minutes. I don't know. So there's still some benefit to Gallagher playing. Don't get me wrong. Gets like a game under his belt before going into the playoffs. But to me, with Carey Price, this game is really important for Carey Price and for the Montreal Canadiens because they get to see where Carey Price's game is at both physically and mentally. And if there's a time for Price to get lit up and get up 3-4 goals, kind of like Freddie Anderson was in that conditioning stint with the Marlies a couple weeks ago, where he gave up like 2 goals on 17 shots in like a 3-1 or 5-3 loss, whatever it was. To me, Carey Price, this is a time where if he's going to get lit up, let it happen in this AHL game. And that's the worst case scenario. And you get to maybe see where he's at. And worst case, you get to maybe go Jake Allen going forward if he's really, really bad tonight. But best case scenario, it helps him get his game back on track, or just get his feet wet, so to speak, and just start feeling the crease a little bit more, feel the rubber, feel some game action for the first time in a month. So for Gallagher, more to lose than to gain, but Carey Price, more to gain than to lose.
Who knows? It's the last game of their season, right?
I agree. I think you play Price because I don't know how much time are we going to give Carey Price to prove that he's actually a good goaltender in this league. I mean, I know you guys think sure he has great technique in there until he decides to actually stop the puck. Congratulations. It's almost sad that we talk about how he had a great month of March. Do you know where Carey Price stands in save percentage this year amongst
So Zach, I'll tell you. Don't worry. We'll save this for a little bit later. Oh, I thought
we were getting into Price now. I was so excited.
I'm just saying in terms of for the context of the series and in terms of giving Price the opportunity to get his feet wet, he's still their number one guy, and he's still the guy that should have the opportunity to get the net in game one.
Well,
the question becomes, how long of a leash do you have on him? If he plays bad, go right to Allen in game 2, and I'm pretty sure you'd agree with me on that.
Price or not? Because I don't know why we think Price should have the right to the net in game 1.
Because he's still their franchise guy, and he's the guy that helped backstop the Canadiens to the win, the play-in round win against the Penguins last year, and also gave them good chances to win against the Flyers last year.
Yeah, but meanwhile, he still got outplayed. We'll get back to him.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. But yeah, so Price and Gallagher in action for the Laval Rocket tonight. But here's another thing I do want to talk about. This is a little bit more, I'd say, relevant than who's in net, because the Habs, worst case, they put Jake Allen in, and Jake Allen, I think, is good enough to do the job. Even, whether it's Jake Allen or Carey Price, they'll have the goaltending to get the job done in this series, or at least give them a chance to win. If they lose, it's going to be other reasons, which we'll talk about later. But in practice today, or the last couple of days, you've had Eric Staal and Yoel Armia on the top 4 lines and Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Cole Caufield on that 5th line. So what were your reactions to that?
I'm disappointed. I know people like to argue for experience, and in the way of Eric Staal, he has a Stanley Cup, and he has the experience. He's been there, but he's shown me nothing or very, very little during the regular season this year to merit his place on a playoff team that needs goal scoring. It bugs me that he's in the lineup and he's taking the spot of someone who can score goals. Maybe you can move a player around and get Caufield in if it's not Kotkaniemi straight up for him. But I don't know, game 1, I wouldn't want to even see Eric Staal in there.
Yeah, I'm 100% agree with that. I think people overvalue having grit on your team in the playoffs, having experience in the playoffs. The only way, when Eric Staal won his Stanley Cup when he was at his peak, which meanwhile was like 13 years ago at this point, he didn't have experience then.
Yeah.
He didn't have experience when he won the Cup. People want experience after they win the Cup, and then they don't seem to ever win one again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the only way you win games is by scoring goals at the end of the day. It's who has more goals, not as who has more hits, who has more past Stanley Cups. So you put your best team on the ice, that gives you the best chance to win. And I can't stand these general managers and coaches who seem to be so out of touch with reality that they can't put themselves to do that.
I will make an argument for Staal being in the lineup, though, because I mentioned this on Twitter. Again, give me a follow at Mike Langer. I mentioned this last week, how a certain guy named Danny Briere in 2014 didn't really contribute much during the regular season, didn't even really contribute too much in the playoffs except for when it mattered most. Game 7, 2014 against the Boston Bruins. Who had a goal and assist? Danny Briere that game. The Habs beat the Lightning in overtime. Who had an assist on Dale Weiss's overtime winner in game 1? Danny Briere. The Habs beat the Bruins in game 1 against PK.
Size ever.
Yeah, but also, if I could counter that.
I'm just making the argument for him, playing devil's advocate, and I'm just arguing for Eric Staal being in the lineup. I agree with you guys, because I'm also very disappointed in the fact that Kotkaniemi gets basically pushed down the lineup as soon as Eric Staal comes in, and because he's a young player with not the most confidence just yet, and we've seen that his confidence could get affected by the lack of opportunity. We've seen that happen with Kotkaniemi, and now Cole Caufield, the guy who scored 2 overtime winners for you and has 4 goals in the last handful of games, right? They should be in the lineup. But I'm just saying,
I think Eric Staal
just finishing experience, it does matter in the playoffs, though.
Eric Staal has 3 points, though. Danny Briere had 25 points in 70 games that season.
Yeah.
Eric Staal has 3.
And Cole Caufield has 2 overtime goals in the past, 5 games or something. He's an impact player. Yeah, he's way more impact player than Eric Staal. He made
even if
Evans
you want
and
to argue
Lehkonen look like a first-line pairing.
Caufield, I think, has been I think he's been great for this team. I think he's going to be a star on this team. But to date, he hasn't been a superstar in the games he's played. Obviously not. But he's still been way better than Eric Staal.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where – so here's what I drew my lines last week, because just because of that experience factor, I would want to give Staal the benefit of the doubt, at least for one game. And I found a way I could fit him into the lineup, but that would be taking out Yoel Armia and Artturi Lehkonen. And that would keep Kotkaniemi and Cole Caufield in the lineup for at least the first game. But because you have your goal scoring with Caufield, you have your 3rd overall pick who you want to develop, who had, 4 goals or 5 goals in 10, 11 playoff games last year for you in Kotkaniemi, right? So to me, you obviously want those guys in your lineup. But I'm taking out guys like Yoel Armia, who has been a little bit inconsistent at times this year, and Artturi Lehkonen, who, despite how well that line of Evans and Paul Byron has been playing down the stretch, I feel like that's more because of Evans driving that line, and also Paul Byron with his two-way ability and shutdown ability. And Artturi Lehkonen was the guy who was kind of missing. He did get a couple of goals, but for all the chances that they generated towards the end of the season there, it was Artturi Lehkonen missing those prime scoring chances. And I feel like that could be, if there's a guy to come out of the lineup, it should be Armia and Lehkonen, and not so much Kotkaniemi and Caufield.
Why do you even want Staal in the lineup so bad? Who cares about experience? The guy has 3 points. The only guy, he's been the most consistent player on this team at not being able to get a point.
Yeah.
That's like remarkable.
There's another factor though, face-offs. He can win you. He could lose. Like he had that really bad game against the Leafs where he's like 1 for 8, but he's also had games where he's been like money in the face-off circle, and that's pretty important as well in the playoffs.
Well, what's his face-off percentage? I'm seeing his face-off percentage is under 50% this year.
With the Habs or overall?
With overall, he's 49% on face-offs. I don't know split by team.
But when you have a guy that like Nick Suzuki, who to his credit has been much better in the face-off circle down the stretch, that's where you have like the Habs being not a great face-off team, and Danault has been relatively struggling in the face-off circle. He's still over 50%. Don't get me wrong, but he's not at the 53, 54% level that he's been in the past. So to me, that element on face-offs, and Kotkaniemi has also improved at his ability to win face-offs this year. But to me, there's an argument to be made for giving Staal the benefit of the doubt early on. But if he's the same slow, just not making much happen type of player early on, well then, I'm totally with you guys. Take him out of the lineup.
Yeah, but what's he going to win? An extra face-off on 20? Or 1 out of 10 face-offs that he wins?
Why do you expect him to be any better?
And it just it comes down also to that experience factor of in big moments, in big games. So again, I agree with you guys just making the argument for Eric Staal being in the lineup. And with that being said, though, all right, so now obviously the people in charge of why Eric Staal and Yoel Armia or whoever else, take your pick, is in the lineup over Kotkaniemi and Caufield falls mostly on Dominique Ducharme and Marc Bergevin and obviously Alex Burrows and maybe not so much Luke Richardson. But I want to play a little game or ask you guys in this format here. Keep both, fire one. Keep both, fire one, or fire both Marc Bergevin and Dominique Ducharme edition.
I don't bring back Ducharme. That's for certain for me. There's a guy named Joel Bouchard who seems very ready to take the helm of an NHL team. He's done great things with Laval. And, if you're looking at Ducharme doesn't have a contract beyond this year as head coach. So in my mind, that spot's open. Ducharme's done nothing to me to prove that he's earned another contract as head coach of the Montreal Canadiens. And I think it's time to look elsewhere. Bergevin, he's been around, what is it, 9 years now?
2012, 2013 was his first season.
Yeah, so it's 9 years, and they've missed the playoffs and so many times. And if it wasn't for this weird season and last weird season, it would be like 5 years in a row they missed the playoffs. He hasn't done the best job. He hasn't built a winning team in a decade, and he's handcuffed this team going forward for the next 5-6 years with big contracts too. It might be time to explore different options for both of them. At the very least, I think they need a new head coach.
So you're fire one hinging on fire both, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, I got to get to this. I haven't been on this show, so I'm very excited to find my show. Ryan, you are way too nice to the people running this embarrassment of a business.
Oh, don't worry. I'm not going to hold back on one of them. Don't worry.
No.
Go ahead.
You're way too... I hope it's Bergevin, because Ducharme, I agree. He should probably get fired. Probably not a good coach. Also thrown into the fire. It's hard to know for a coach. In the NHL, I find coaching is the least important position compared to other sports, because there's not as much you could do. You're not calling individual plays in hockey. There's a lot more flow to it. Marc Bergevin, if in any other $2 billion business, if someone ran it as incompetently as Marc Bergevin, they would be working as a delivery man for the local Domino's. This guy, beyond incompetent, Michael Lang, beyond incompetent. He has done nothing. He has ran this team for 10 years. Nothing. We give him all the money. He can spend as much as he wants. Doesn't do anything. Toronto finds a way to get these star players. Montreal does nothing. I know we'll hear the nonsense. Oh, people don't want to come to Montreal. This is nonsense. Maybe some guys don't. We have all the money. We could offer them more money. Then they'll come to Montreal. Bergevin puts together these teams. He says, here, Josh Anderson will give you $6 million. I know at the start everyone was rubbing it in my face. Oh, look, Zack, you're wrong. Josh Anderson's a star. I said, wait till the end of the season. Let's see. He's horrible already, Josh Anderson. We're giving him $6 million for the next 6 years. Marc Bergevin should have to do dishes to pay back the amount of money we're spending on his terrible moves.
What about Tyler Toffoli, Jake Allen, and Joel Edmondson?
Who cares, Tyler Toffoli, Jake Anderson? Of course, you're gonna make a million moves.
Tyler Toffoli has the best contract in the NHL, by the way.
Oh my God, he does not have the best contract in the NHL. He also had one good season.
28 goals for $4.25 million. That's like the Pacioretty contract back in the day.
Toffoli not even close to a point per game still. How's he have a better contract than Kaprizov? There's one guy at the top of the head.
Kaprizov is also a young player.
Yeah, Tyler Toffoli. Who cares? You make one good deal. If I make 100 deals, of course a couple are going to end up being good. That doesn't make you a good.
You got Jake Allen for nothing.
Michael, if I had my 4-year-old sister run this team, she would randomly trade for guys who would end up being good. Overall, he makes bad move after bad move after bad move, and then we're like, wait, look, he took Paul Byron off waivers. He must be good. He knows what he's doing. No, but you do
gave him a contract. Yeah, you gave him like a $3.5 million or AAV contract.
Yeah.
So
he makes 100 moves. Who else did you say has been so good for this team outside Toffoli? That's his only good.
Jake Allen, Joel Edmondson.
Jake Allen? That's been a good acquisition.
Yeah.
Jake Allen has a 907.
He saved the season.
Percentage.
He pretty much saved the season.
907 save percentage.
But you can't put all the goals that have gone against the Canadiens this year on Jake Allen. Like you can't, especially in this division, especially with the guy with the fact they've played against McDavid. Okay, they shut down McDavid with Matthews and Marner, and the struggles they had against the Flames and the Sens. Like, come on.
Okay, so why is Jack Campbell had a better save percentage? Why is Connor Hellebuck had a better save percentage?
Because they play on better teams in front of them.
Wait, but whose responsibility is it to make that team?
So just let me back up a second here. So I am full on. I feel the same way you do, Zach, towards about Marc Bergevin. I feel that way about Dominique Ducharme in his short tenure, especially since you have a guy named Joel Bouchard who is, like Matt said, pretty much NHL ready.
The next head coach isn't going to turn around the team. It's what we build as the team is going to turn around the team. Joel Bouchard isn't winning this team the cup because of his coaching tactics.
But can he make Jesperi Kotkaniemi a better player? Can he not make Jesperi Kotkaniemi better?
Yeah.
Maybe slightly.
Yeah. So and is that not, would that not be important for the current and future success of the Montreal Canadiens?
It is. I agree. We should have a better coach, but he's not going to turn Kotkaniemi into a star player.
So to me, honestly, I am more my issue with Marc Bergevin. All right, the real issue with Marc Bergevin, not the trades, but the drafting. If you think of it, the drafting from 2013 up until probably Cole Caufield, maybe you can say even Kotkaniemi, but definitely from 2013 up until at least 2017, we still, the jury's still out on Ryan Poehling, but you look at the guys in the lineup from that time that have been drafted, Artturi Lehkonen and Jake Evans. And that's it. Sure, Kotkaniemi and Caufield after that, but between 2013, that's 4 years worth of drafting that of players that are not not on the team, that are not contributors on your team. What happened to Sherbak? What happened to McCarron? So if you're gonna hate on Bergevin for something, absolutely the drafting.
You wouldn't hate on him for giving Josh Anderson $6 million, or giving Carl Alsner $5 million, or giving Carey Price $10.5 million, or trading for Shea Weber that we're now stuck with. We legitimately have 4 contracts that are buyout worthy, and you could only buy out one.
So Alsner, Miss, Weber. I mean, at the time, it wasn't a bad deal. I mean, look PK Subban has bounced around.
At the time,
PK Subban has bounced around. So
his job isn't for at the time. His job is for the future of the team. So you can't not blame him for how things turn out. That's his job.
So the Byron, that was a bad contract. The Anderson, look, it's in terms of the term, absolutely, it's not probably the best contract. But in terms of let's just see what Josh Anderson can do in these playoffs against the Leafs.
I mean, come on, we're going to give him a million chances. The guy scores 1 goal 2 years ago. Let's give him a chance.
But he's a guy that when he's not scoring, he skates, he hits, he's a leader on your team. He's a guy that you do hit. The $5 million that's being paid to Josh Anderson is, especially with what he's likely going to do for this team in the playoffs, is valuable. Maybe not for 7 years, but right now,
his hitting
right now it's valuable. So, I mean, he had a couple of games where with 2 goals, he almost single-handedly helped the Habs beat the Leafs in that first game. And then there's another 2-goal game against the Oilers. If he doesn't score 2 goals in that game, the Habs because of Drouin's high stick and late in the game, they lose.
He had 40 games where he played 16 minutes and was a -2 and didn't have a single point, but he had 4 hits and we lost by 3. Why don't we count that?
Look, again, to me, I blame this season, this lackluster season, more on the schedule and on coaching. Obviously, the players deserve a lot of responsibility.
We're never blame the players and the manager.
No, of course. Hey, I'm blaming the manager for the drafting. I'm blaming the players for not being as good as they can be. But I put also the coaching. I blame the coaching for not putting them in positions to succeed.
But how do you not blame Bergevin for Josh Anderson or Carey Price or Shea Weber?
I blame Bergevin for the lack of drafting. But in terms of the contracts with Carey Price, it's either Carey Price or at the time Al Montoya. Who do you want in nets?
You don't need Al Montoya. We could have got any
Mike Condon.
We could have had any of the 42 goalies ahead of him in save percentage.
So you could sign Ilya Bryzgalov to a 10-year contract and look how that went out for Phil. All I'm saying is that some of those moves, at least Carey Price, Carey Price at the time was a top 2 player in the NHL, given that he won the Hart Trophy and the Vezina and the Jennings. So did you pay him for that.
So did Jose Theodore. We didn't give him $10 million a year for 10 years.
Look, to me though, you have to pay Price for what he did, and he was one of the best players in the NHL at the time, and so was Jose Theodore. But Jose Theodore, I don't think his contract was expiring at the time. But anyway, look, I want to move on. Obviously, we could go on and on about this. I do want to move on more in terms of the context of this season or of this series. All right, so let's come back to Carey Price in terms of Price versus Jake Allen. Pencer, I think I know what your answer is going to be, but who do you prefer in net, Carey Price or Jake Allen for this series?
Surprisingly, you actually didn't know my answer, because my answer is more that both have been pretty terrible this year. And if you're going to go with one, sure, it doesn't really matter to me. I would give whichever one you start with, I'd give that one the short leash. But I mean, come on, it's not a debate that they've both been bad this year. They both put up terrible stats. There's no way of changing their stats. You can look at their breakaway save percentage. Their save percentage from 5 feet away, 10 feet away, with defense, without defense. Their expected goals against, it's bad. So I probably would start with Price. His numbers have been a little worse than Allen, but I'd still give him the benefit of the doubt. He has been in the playoffs a lot, hasn't done well. Maybe he'll turn it around. And like you said, he had a good month of March, so he's shown that he can get hot at least for a couple weeks in a row. But I think if he's bad for even game 1, you take him out. And I think if Allen's bad for game 2, I don't know what you do. Caden Primo's terrible too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still 21 years old or 20 years old.
So maybe you give him a chance. I don't know.
Carey Price has to be the goalie you go with, because he can get hot, and he's shown that when he's hot, he steals games. And we haven't seen that as much with Jake Allen. Maybe we've seen it a little bit here and there, but Carey Price, at least sometimes in playoff, Carey Price can win series for this team. And against the Toronto Maple Leafs, who have great goal scorers, I think you might need Carey Price to steal some games. I don't think Jake Allen can do it as well as Carey Price when Carey Price is on. And that's what I'm going to hint, John. I'm going to hang my hat on Carey Price playing his heart out. And if he gets it done, he gets it done. But you live and die with Carey Price. So
I would say if this series started 3 days after the finale against the Oilers on Wednesday, if this series started, let's say, this past Saturday at the same time as some of the other series have started at, I would almost consider going maybe with Jake Allen at first, because he's been more fresh and has more games under his belt recently. But because of the week off and because of the reasons you guys mentioned, Carey Price has to be the guy to get game 1, especially with what he's going to do or what he's about to do right now with Laval, get some game action. Right, Carey Price is the guy you got to start with, and I agree with Zach on this one. You got to have a short leash. If Price falters in game 1, or especially if the Habs find themselves in an 0-2 hole and Price hasn't been stellar, maybe you try mixing things up for game 3. Maybe you go with Jake Allen, who's been a guy that at least has been steady this year, if anything. Well, maybe Zach, you don't think he's stellar, but sorry,
Games 3 and 4, I think, are back-to-back too. So I think we'll see.
They are, yeah. So I don't know, but it's still playoffs, and to me, I don't know if the Leafs are gonna mix it. I know the Leafs have a soup starting game 1, so but I don't think in the playoffs you really worry about alternating back and forth unless it's more of a performance issue. So to me, I would start with Carey Price, and like you guys said, though, have a short leash going forward into this series. And yeah, but here's another kind of going back to our discussion before in terms of what has plagued the Canadiens this year. So what is most important in terms of the Habs matchup with the Leafs in this series? Offense, defense, or goaltending?
For me, it's goaltending for sure. I think if in the playoffs, it's almost always goaltending. If you're going to steal the series. But I don't know. I'm not so confident in the goaltending, so maybe they have to score 6 a game.
So to me, though, or Matt, you go ahead first, actually. I'll go last on this one.
For the Habs to win, it has to be goaltending. You're not going to win in an offensive battle against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't see it happening. So for the Habs to win, goaltending has to be their key.
I'm going to say defense because the defense is going to be the X factor in the series because between Carey Price, Jake Allen, Jack Campbell, and Craig, nice. Frederik Andersen, because Craig Anderson started for the Caps or came in relief in the Caps game, so that's why I'm thinking of Craig Anderson. But anyway, so Freddie Andersen, between the 4 goaltenders involved in this series, they're capable of playing well enough to give their teams a chance to win and not be the reason why their teams lose. But to me, Leafs teams of years past, you look at the regular season, 2019-2020, defense awful. You look at their playoff rounds the losses in the playoffs to the Bruins, defense, Jake Gardiner falling apart, collapsing in game 7s, both times against the Bruins, and also the 4-1 instance in 2013. Defense just falling apart, right? So to me, though, now what made the Leafs so good this year is the fact that they might have figured out this whole playing defense thing, save for the 5-1 game the lead that they blew against the Ottawa Senators back in February or March, whatever it was. I think it was February. But to me, if they figured out this defense thing, and with the Habs, with their issues on defense, if Shea Weber is going to play like a rookie defenseman and not a 36-year-old veteran defenseman who's in good position, making good decisions with the puck, keeping things simple, and if Romanov is going to be like he was late in the season, turning pucks over, not leaving guys uncovered, and if Jeff Petrie isn't going to be Jeff Norris, well, the Habs, they're in trouble because to me, like, your goalie can only do so much. But like you said, if you're going to give Austin Matthews, Zach Hyman, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, John Tavares so many chances to score, they're going to score their goals. So to me, it's a matter of if you got to shut them down, almost like they've played against McDavid, or you got to at least maybe not shut them down, but limit them the same way you limited McDavid this year and not let them have a party of 4-point games or Matthews multi-goal games, multi-point games left and right. So defense is the key to me in the series.
Who has the better defense score? The Habs or the
on
Leafs?
paper, the Habs, but in practice, I would say the Leafs with their top 4 of Brody and Riley and Hall and Jake Muzzin. Like they've really they've figured things out this year for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Leafs have the better defense.
Yeah, I think so. Why on paper us? I think on paper them too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Jeff Petrie.
If you look at what Shea Weber is supposed to be, and if you look at Jeff Petrie and the way Joel Edmondson have played, and also Brett Kulak has been one of the most underrated players on the Canadiens, I'd say, this year. And what Romanov at his best,
scratched a lot.
Yeah,
well, is that because of the player, because of the coach?
The player.
I don't think it's the player. I think it's the coach, man. Kulak should not have been scratched as much as he's been scratched this year. Absolutely not. Kulak is a guy that, he'll make his mistakes, but notice whenever he makes mistakes with the puck, he always gets back in good enough position to correct them, Whereas guys like Weber, he turns the puck over behind the net. He can't get back in front. He doesn't have the speed he used to have, or I don't know if he ever really had the speed, but he's just, turnovers behind the net, chasing guys out of position. Whereas Brett Kulak, at least he has a guy, like you talk about the Habs' need for a puck-moving defenseman and a good mobile skating defenseman. Brett Kulak is that guy, or can be that guy.
Well, again, I know you probably aren't a fan of the whole points thing because there'll probably be some argument as to how he's good defensively, but his good movement and his getting the puck out of the zone to lead to offensive breaks. Obviously, hasn't done much because he has 8 points.
But you look at a guy like Victor Mete, where you had that element in your lineup, but the problem with Victor Mete was he would also not be able to cover anyone in front of the net.
And
he would just be lost defensively, and he couldn't shoot. Whereas Brett Kulak, maybe he doesn't have that offensive production, sure, but at least he has that element of his game without the warts defensively. And that's important in this Habs defense core. So that's why, honestly, I would say the defense is the X factor for this series. If the Habs are going to have a chance, they have to not, like, if they're going to get clean looks to break out of their zone. I'm not talking just about the defensemen here. I'm also talking about the forwards with their abilities to help support the defensemen. Right? You look at guys like Staal. One of the reasons why Staal, I mean, I know I advocated for him to be in the lineup, but at least early on in his time with the Habs, has been a liability defensively. Suzuki also, as great as he's been to start and end the season, Suzuki's issue has been defensively during that like sophomore slump phase of the season. Kotkaniemi also, I mean, I feel like for him, his issue has been over playing defensively, over supporting his D-men and leaving guys open. The third, fourth guy high has been killing the Habs all season on the rush. Like, they just haven't figured out how to cover that third or fourth guy entering the zone, honestly. So they have to have a chance in this series. They have to play much better team defense than they have in the regular season. But I want to ask you guys now, what do they have to do? What do the Habs have to do to pull off this upset?
They have to score some clutch goals. And those guys are on the bench.
A lot comes down to Danault, too. I think he hasn't been playing to expectation as much this year after an incredible season last year. And I think everyone knows the key to stopping Toronto is stopping Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. And Danault is one of the best guys at stopping the top lines all of last year. And if he could do it against Toronto, if Marner and Matthews don't kill the Habs this series, I think the Habs have a great chance to win.
So I saw an interesting statistic where whenever the Danault line was matched, or I think it was Danault, just whatever his line was, whenever they were matched up against Matthews, the Leafs outscored the Habs only 3-2, which is still like they outscored the Habs. But you look at all the times that Matthews has scored goals against the Habs this year, he pretty much took advantage. That was them taking advantage mostly of bad matchups. If when Danault was on the ice against Matthews, if the Leafs only outscored the Habs 3-2 in those instances, well, that means Matthews, for all the goals that he had against the Habs, that must mean like they had, like, as I remember one particular instance where Suzuki just completely lost sight of Matthews going towards the net, backdoor for a pass, which Marner fed to him perfectly. Like, that was against Suzuki. So yeah, like going back to the discussion about defense, to me, if Gallagher or if Danault, whether it's with Gallagher and Tatar or Danault with a Byron and a Lehkonen, kind of like in the Philly series last year, like could be like, yeah, they have to play as out of their minds against the Matthews and Marner, and whether it's Hyman or Foligno, whoever plays with those two guys, like, yeah, they have to play out of their mind against them.
Yeah. It's true.
So let's honestly, you know what, guys, let's end the show with our predictions here. And obviously, if you've been tuning in, I forgot to mention, if you have any comments that you want to add to the discussion, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. But we got the Laval, I almost said Habs there, but the Laval Rocket taking on the Toronto Marlies, just about to, I think the puck dropped as we speak. So, but let's end the show here with our predictions. What do you guys predict for this first Habs-Leafs series? What's the outcome going to be for the first time since 1979?
Go ahead, Cowan. Go ahead.
My optimist in me says the Habs bring it to 6 or 7 games, maybe. I can't really see them pulling it off, but 6 or 7 games, the Habs can find a way to steal 1 or 2, maybe a third, and let's see some interesting games in there. At least give us something to build on for next year. But I think the Habs are going to have trouble with Toronto's firepower. I think Austin Matthews is firing at a whole nother cylinder. He's got, 40-something goals in his 50 and change games. he's scoring goals like there's no tomorrow. Mitch Marner's playing incredibly too. And then you have the second line with Tavares and Nylander. You got the defense there. It's Toronto's year to really make an impact. And Montreal needs to show something to build off of into next year. And so I'm going to say Toronto in 6 or 7.
Yeah, for me, some may call it delusional because I despise this team's management. I despise half the players on the team. And I think they don't do very much right in my lifetime. But it is still the Habs year. They will find a way to win. It's the Toronto Maple Leafs. They always find a way to lose. I will never pick against the Montreal Canadiens. This is their year. Habs in 6.
I love it, man. Zach, just one instance tearing them apart and just like,
I hate them.
absolutely ripping them. But then now just like bringing out the homer and like the Habs fan just being like,
I hate them because they cause me so much distress in my life. Like, why can't I just be like a Golden Knights fan where they just win?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, true. Like the Knights, honestly, that's why they have to go through some pain, man. Like to be an expansion team and go right to sound like a final. Like,
I don't understand how Habs fans could be so optimistic and such a big fan of some of these players. Like, all we do is lose just every single year.
Because I will say this, though, because what's the point of being a sports fan if you're not optimistic? If you have zero optimism about anything, even if your team's awful,
like in sports.
But even if your team is like terrible, even if you're like the Buffalo, okay, maybe the Buffalo Sabres is a bad example because they're just bad and like they have no hope for anything. But even like in a lost season, at least you could cheer to tank and get the first overall pick.
You make a great point.
Because you want to talk about
hockey.
Yeah, but you go back to talking about how the Leafs got all these good players because they were really bad and they got top draft picks and they had the opportunities to draft Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews. So to me, as a fan, it's like if you have nothing to cheer for, nothing to get excited about, then what's the point of watching these games? And I mean, other than, you enjoy the game, but at least in terms of being a fan, if you have nothing to cheer for, then what's the point of being a fan?
It's a horrible lifeline. I was born into it. I have no choice for it to ruin my life for the next 70 plus years, We're just gonna...
Hey, at least your Saints got a Super Bowl in your lifetime back in 2009 there.
I know, but the Habs are still the be-all, end-all here, and it's just all disappointment.
So with that being said, I'm going to give my prediction. So the Habs, I look at this team when they're rested. Early in the season, they went on that ridiculous 7-1-2 run that they would not have made the playoffs if they did not start the season 7-1-2 with how the rest of the season went. And also after that COVID break, they won 3 games in a row. So when this Habs team is rested, they are a much better team. Like you look at some other teams, like when they're rested, they get rusty and all that, whatever. But this team, when this team is rested, they can do some damage. But I think they're still going to get in their own way. I think they deprive their opportunity of having guys like Jesperi Kotkaniemi take another step in his development. And if he was the player, I don't know if he's going to be the player that he was in the bubble last year. And at times this season, I think he'll be closer to what we saw to the end of the season and back in that 2019-2020 season that ended up with him getting sent to Laval. So I don't know how much of he'll still get in the game. I'm sure he'll still get in the series. And I think the reason why we're seeing Caufield and Kotkaniemi not dress is because of the last change thing and that maybe they'll be active, especially if they're got down in an 0-2 hole coming back to the Bell Center. So all this to say is that the fact the Habs are rested, they're going to push this to 7, but they're going to lose in 7. So I have Toronto Maple Leafs in 7, and that's my prediction. So, yeah. So anyway, guys, look, thank you so much for joining the show here. This is a lot of fun, honestly. One of my, I think this is like, again, my first live roundtable show that I do here on Langer at the Mic. And thank you so much, as usual, for being a part of it. And to our audience, leave a comment in the comment section, and we'll definitely get back to it. And yeah, thank you guys so much for joining.
Thank you. An absolute pleasure.
And also, Zack, by the way, you can follow him at From This Stadium, right? I think you're doing a show tonight at 9, you said, right?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, go check that out. And Matt, as usual, you can give him a follow on Twitter. What is it? I have it there. Yeah, at Matt Cowan 18. And as usual, give a big thumbs up if you enjoy our commentary. Give us a subscribe here at Langer at the Mic. And thank you so much for tuning into this Habs-Leafs preview, part 1 on Langer at the Mic. And I look forward to seeing you again next time.